Hey guys, Ben here and welcome back to another video on The Flash. Today we're going to be talking about the ending of Season 9 and what I think of the return of the speedsters who have been such a big part of The Flash as a whole. So if you do go on to enjoy the video, please be sure to leave a like and a comment and subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss any future DCTV videos later this year. Okay, so this video is going to be a bit more of a rant, and you guys know that I don't do many ranting videos and I don't get annoyed too easily, but I've just been thinking about this a lot since the series finale of The Flash aired, and that is specifically about the fight scenes taking out all the past speedsters from the show who all appeared once again in the series finale. It's just been something that I've been thinking about for a while, so we're going to get into it and dig into why I think the return of these speedsters didn't work out good in the end. So looking back at the Flash's history, Season 1 we have Reverse Flash. He was the first main villain. He was a great villain and he turned out to be Barry's true nemesis, as he returned many times over the years in many different forms from many different points in time, and he's been played by Tom Cavanagh and Matt Letcher as well. I've loved Reverse Flash since the very start and I still love him to this day. However, the way that he was taken out was very unsatisfactory as he faced off against Allegra in the series finale. Obviously this is not the main focus of my video, but I want to actually go into all of these speedsters and why I think their endings were just not good. And so for Reverse Flash, it's because that scene with Allegra was super anticlimactic, and I thought we would go back to Reverse Flash after with maybe one final battle with Barry, but no, it seems the fight with Allegra was enough to take him out once and for all. It really didn't make sense as an ending for the character because Allegra had no real strong link to Reverse Flash. Yes, she had the link to a version of Wells, but that's different, that's not the same character. It only really made sense to have the ending of Reverse Flash be against Barry, because Barry is the person who Reverse Flash has orientated his whole life around in order to get back at him. So that is what makes sense, and the previous episode, a couple of episodes before, where we actually got that full circle moment with Barry becoming the original Flash, replacing him, facing off against Matt Letcher's version of Thorn that is meant to kill Barry's mum, was great. Like, that was the perfect ending for Reverse Flash. So I feel like this finale end just is going to be something that people are going to ignore and pretend never happened. So just to be clear, this is kind of like a rant. It's just me airing my opinions about these villains and the way that they ended on the show. This isn't me trying to be smart or critical in any way. It's just my opinion, and if you have a different opinion, please be sure to let me know down in the comments below. Then let's move on to the main discussion of today's video before we get into those final villains who also appeared, and that is Zoom. Now, I think out of all of the characters who showed up in the Flash's series finale, he was the biggest disappointment for me. Now, this is in a couple of different ways. First things first, in the same way as Reverse Flash, I thought the final fight scene with Zoom was very disappointing and very lackluster. The CGI wasn't too good as he faced off against Keone. It was great seeing Teddy Sears out in the flesh. You actually saw him and I think he did a good job. So what happened in the scene was he was facing off against the police, then Keone and Mark somehow showed up using some sort of portal. Then he does the iconic line before he starts running around. Obviously he's got red lightning this time because he has been connected to the negative speed force by Cobalt Blue. And he hops off the wall and he lets rip at Keone, but Keone is able to hold his lightning back and absorb it within inside of her, just showing how powerful she is. Now, yes, this is a great moment for Keone, but for Zoom, it just shows how much of a nerf he has got in this finale, because if you guys remember Zoom back in Season 2, he was absolutely unformidable. No one could go up against him. Barry got shredded by him. And now he faces off against a new character who is very powerful, yes, I must say, but he is defeated in one hit as Keone absorbs that red lightning that he's shooting at her, and it doesn't seem like she is doing much in order to try and stop him. It's super easy for her, and he gets flung back by the lightning as she shoots it back. Mark does nothing, he's just standing there, so what's the point of him? And Keone is able to stop him in an instant, and everyone just goes over Zoom and his lifeless body. Obviously he could be knocked out or he could be dead, but that's pretty much all that happens. He doesn't even get up, there is no fight back, and that's because of the lack of time in this episode to go into each and every one of these villains properly. And I think here lies the biggest problem with the finale and the way that they tried to bring back all of these past villains, and that's that they didn't give them enough time. We've seen how Zoom and Reverse Flash are extremely powerful in past seasons, and that's because we've seen them in many episodes showing up and facing off against the Flash and the rest of Team Flash. And because of that lack of time in this episode, they are brought back and they have to be defeated really quickly in order to progress the episode, so it only makes sense that they do it this way. But that's why I think the finale shouldn't have just been that one part. Yes, they say the whole final graphic novel is this one big finale, but I think it needed 2 more episodes. It needed a whole episode to face off against these past villains and then conclude it with what happened in the latter half of the actual series finale in the final episode. And so the episode before that should have been Barry and Team Flash facing off against Reverse Flash, Zoom, Savitar, Godspeed and Cobalt Blue, because that would have given them the amount of time that they needed to show just how powerful they are, but also just how powerful Team Flash has now become. Yes, it was always going to be that Team Flash were going to defeat the villains because that's just the way that the story is supposed to end. It's a happy ending. Eric Wallace emphasized that for a long time. That was the way that they were going, so we pretty much from the start knew that everyone was going to be okay, no one would be killed, and so the villains wouldn't be able to go as brutal as you would like to see them, like they have done in their own respective seasons, because you need to show how powerful a villain is. And what's the biggest show of that? It's by killing people, right? And Zoom, out of everyone, racked up the biggest body count. He is a serial killer after all. And so it was just a big shame to see specifically Zoom be so weak and defeated so easily. And like I said, this is nothing against Keone. I think this is all on the writers and Eric Wallace rushing how they dealt with these characters showing up again. And I think this is where the flaws in their returns come from. And then number 2, so I said there was 2 things about Zoom that annoyed me. So that was the first thing. And I think that applies to all of the other villains, and we'll get into Savitar, Godspeed and Cobalt Blue at the end of this video. But the second thing that annoyed me to do with Zoom was his physical appearance. It's clear that they saved maybe his costume, and that costume is the same, but his cowl looks very different. You can see us side by side on the screen right here. Zoom does not look intimidating at all in this series finale. He actually looks like, in my opinion, and I know this is very descriptive and it's just me being a bit weird, but he looks like, with his cowl, a mix of Deadpool from Wolverine Origins mixed with Weasel from the Suicide Squad and maybe a Chickmunk. Like, he does not look scary. The original Zoom costume, his mask, was quite different. You could really see the textures on the mask. It looked like almost like a wrinkly face with his mouth sewn up. And in this case, in the series finale, the new cowl that they created for him just looks like they skimped on that detail to do with his mouth specifically, but also his eyes. This is down to the CGI and the way that his eyes are moving and the coloring. So he's just got black eyes, as he says, you can't look up the darkness. That's his iconic line from season 2. And he has this kind of white glimmer in his eyes, just like he's had in the past, in order to emphasize that there is someone behind the mask and it's not just pure blackness. However, his eyes don't look intimidating. There is no kind of scowling from his eyebrows or, you know, around his eyes. You can see in the side-by-side comparison that there is much more going on the right image. He looks way more intimidating than Zoom on the left in the series finale. I just think he is not intimidating. He is completely nerfed in terms of his powers, as we talked about earlier. He's taken out so easy, and he doesn't look scary. He just looks like a guy in a costume, and the costume looks like a cosplay costume version of the actual Zoom suit. Yes, the actual suit looks good, but the cowl, the whole mask, looks like a parody of the old Zoom. Let me know, do you agree with me in the comments below? I noticed that when Zoom showed up in the series finale, but as I've been thinking about the finale as the weeks have gone by, it really has hit me that they've messed up the Zoom mask in the finale, and I think they didn't have it, and so they had to recreate it. It also could be something to do with the lighting. Maybe the lighting scheme has changed since season 2 and since the last time we saw Zoom, but I think it's really to do with the way that his costume looks and the CGI in his eyes. It just does not look intimidating. He looks like he is there, and as I said, I think he looks kind of like Deadpool from Wolverine Origins mixed with Weasel from the Suicide Squad. I know that's a funny mix of characters, but honestly, that's what I thought of straight away. I thought of Weasel from the Suicide Squad and Deadpool, which is just what came to mind when I was looking at this new Zoom costume. Okay, so let's move on to talk about Savitar. So Savitar faced off against Nora in the series finale. This was a very brief scene. I had the least amount of problems with this scene because I felt like Nora actually could defeat Savitar if she really tried. Yes, it was still rushed, but it was more believable that a speedster could take on a speedster like Savitar, and Nora is pretty powerful after all. And I like the way that they replicated what happened to Iris back in season 3. I thought it was a good callback, and I just didn't have too much of a problem with this scene, barring the fact that, yeah, it was definitely rushed. Now let's talk about that Godspeed scene, because that was terrible. That was probably one of my least favorite scenes in the entire finale. So Godspeed was facing off against Cecile, who is now all powerful as we've seen in the last season, and yeah, it's just not good. So Godspeed creates a bunch of clones and faces off against Cecile, who's in her new superhero costume. So all the clones go after Cecile, and she's able to easily take them down all one by one as they all approach her. And first things first, it obviously makes no sense that Cecile is able to even see where they are because they run so fast, and somehow she's able to at least feel their presence in exactly where they're about to appear, and so that's how she's able to take them on. I know they've been leading towards Cecile being all powerful for a long time, but the progression in her story just makes no sense. How fast she has progressed to being this powerful that she can easily take down all these Godspeed clones, while Barry struggled for a long time back when Godspeed appeared. And it just seemed like it really wasn't an effort for Cecile. So this is probably one of the worst things to have happened in the series finale. And at the end of the scene, Cecile just taps on her mind and she's able to stop the main Godspeed by getting into his head, just like, say, Doctor Strange would do, or like Dr. Fate. And so she's just really powerful and able to stop all these Godspeeds, and it was just not a good scene. Also, she flew at one point. So yeah, you can say I'm not a fan of this. And I have to emphasize overall, like, I really enjoyed this series finale. Like, I acknowledge the flaws as I'm talking about in this video, but at the same time I had a good job. I think they've wrapped up the Flash's story in a really good way, and I love Barry's ending. But these individual scenes with the villains were just completely rushed, and it was just such a shame to see all of these villains nerfed and easily taken on by our characters. So let's go on to talk about the final villain, that being, of course, Cobalt Blue himself, the final villain of the Flash series as a whole. And so what do I think about the final scene where Barry convinced Cobalt Blue to stay as the Avatar, but to get rid of the Cobalt Blue crystal that has been corrupting him throughout this final graphic novel? Well, I actually think it makes a lot of sense, and I kind of like the ending. Yes, it was a little anticlimactic. You know, Barry refused to fight, and Cobalt Blue was convinced by Barry's words to go against the crystal and the way that it was manipulating him. But it makes sense because he did become the person that he was trying to stop back when Eddie originally died. And so him realizing this makes a lot of sense, because Eddie was never stupid. Like, he was pretty smart, and they've made it clear this is the same Eddie, but he is just being manipulated by the negative speed force and by the crystal itself. And with Barry being able to get through to him, he was able to convince him to stop and take out the crystal from his suit. So overall, I think Cobalt Blue was a good villain. I really like seeing Eddie Thawne back again. Rick Hosnett did a great job playing him. And overall, I would say he is one of the better villains that Eric Wallace has created in his run as the Flash showrunner. So I thought it was a good ending villain for the show. I'm happy that they went with Cobalt Blue as the final villain. Yes, he wasn't the best villain in the show. I still regard Zoom as the best, and that's why I was most annoyed by him in this series finale, as well as Reverse Flash. But he was one of the better Eric Wallace villains alongside the likes of Bloodwork and when Reverse Flash returned in Armageddon, but that was completely different because that's still Reverse Flash and he is one of the best villains. So yeah, this does it for my video. Thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know down in the comments below, do you agree with my criticisms and my rants to do with the villains and the way that they ended on The Flash? Overall, I just think it's a huge shame that they weren't given more time to actually close out their stories once and for all. Yes, they were closed at the ending of their respective seasons, but with the return, you kind of want a good ending for those iconic villains, and they just didn't get it. I think Cobalt Blue and Savitar maybe had the best ending, and that's about it. Zoom, Reverse Flash, Godspeed, they were not good endings. So for now, leave a like and a comment. Let me know what you think about all of this down in the comments below. Also, subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss any future videos, and you can click on the top right corner of the screen to watch my latest video. But for now, I'll catch you guys later. Goodbye.
I see red.